overview. Just next slides. Probably go to the next slide. Thank you. As I said, I'm Tom. I've been in the service. This is my 14th year, and I'm the manager of Team 1 of Wimbledon. I've been doing this role for the last year as we came into team-based working in London. So apart from I've only really been a manager with team-based working, but I have been managed under non-team-based working before that. So I have a team of 17 different paramedics, technicians, trainees, student paramedics, and apprentice paramedics, assistant ambulance practitioners, sorry. So a big mix, quite a young team. And with this, because of team-based working, I manage them. I work the same shifts as them. So 2 earlys, 2 nights, and then 5 off. So I get to see them every day. They get to see me. We get to catch up all the time. And one particular part of me catching up with them, we go to the next slide, sorry. And then the next one. We get to have on our second early a huddle, which is an opportunity. It's a protected time at the beginning of our shift where we can have a catch up, see how everyone's doing, talk about anything that's sort of personally going on in the service. So any updates from the medical director we'd go through, anything I need to pass on. So that might even be overtime bulletins for them. We'll also talk about anything they've done sort of clinically that week. So the week leading up to the huddle, I'll keep an eye on what calls they've been to, just to see if anything interesting has happened or any complex cases. And with that, we'll go through the last sort of 10 minutes of the huddle. I'll get one of them to talk about one of the jobs that they've been to. So on this particular example, if we go to the next slide, we talked about a case where the team, we have 1 car on the team, and 2 of the ambulances all went to a cardiac arrest. So a man in his 50s had a cardiac arrest. The response car got there first, and then the 2 ambulances from the team after. So when they got there, they all knew each other. The paramedic on the car would be probably my most experienced paramedic on the team. Because she was there first, she knew that one of the ambulances that came, she was a newly qualified paramedic and had never led a cardiac arrest, the lead clinician. So she helped her to do that. She was also aware that somebody else was a student paramedic and hadn't done certain skills. So she was able to help him do them skills. So as a team, there were 6 of them. They worked really well together. Everyone knew each other, everyone spoke to each other, and everyone knew everyone's strengths and what they needed to learn. So they used that sort of model to do the call. We got the patient to have his heartbeat back, breathing for himself. Got taken to St George's Hospital, where he was then treated at the hospital. After that, they obviously did a debrief together for about half an hour. But then we were able to go through this at the huddle for 10 minutes, which was a great opportunity for everyone. So they talked about what they did, what they could have learned, what they did sort of really well, and what they could do better next time. So altogether, they had this discussion, which we would never have had before team-based working, because you'd have had a little debrief at the hospital. But this opportunity to sit down on a different day and then somebody sort of chair it. So we went through it really methodically and talked about it. Then we went, if you could go to the next slide, sorry. We then went to, it's the previous one. We then went to our next week, and because we then do another huddle, we were able to see how the patient was and then discuss that. So we found out the patient was in ITU. So far, it was a good outcome for the patient. So we're able to follow on. So we're able to talk as a group about how it went, how it's going, how he's doing. And while they're doing that, I'm also able to pick up on any sort of welfare concerns. Someone might grab me after and just say that they're struggling with X, Y, and Z. So there's so many angles to the huddle, but it is a great opportunity I found for the last 10 minutes for us to go through a patient story, a call that they've been to, that we can all sort of learn from. But that's an example of one of the sort of clinical aspects of the huddle. I think Mark's going to talk about.
Can I have the next slide, please? So, as part of our development of the CTM group to be able to equip them to do this, we've been running the clinical leadership resuscitation package. There's 3 days of face-to-face teaching. It's led and delivered by the critical care advanced practice team. And it's very much focused on how do we develop this group of staff from a CTM point of view, to be able to manage cardiac arrest face to face, and that difference in managing what is unfortunately now referred to as a flash team, a team who may not know each other, who may just come together for that one incident. Because however well team-based working works, there will always be the possibility that somebody on that team has never worked with anyone before. And that's a leadership skill that's quite challenging. But also we've worked with through the CLRP package around a safe constructive environment to make mistakes in, as well as how we focus on that hot debrief and that cold debrief that goes on and the tools that allow people to debrief that. And if I can have the next slide, please, Nora. And that has now been delivered to 99.6% of all of our CTMs. The remaining 4.4% of them are coming in June. And this is some of the feedback that we've had from the CTMs that have attended the course. So that is a little bit about not only how we're using the team-based working to improve clinical outcome, but also how we're equipping the clinical team managers to lead that piece of work. Vanilla told me 10 minutes. I did it in 9 minutes 58 seconds.
Well done. No, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Question?
I just have a question. So just in terms of, where you encounter then sort of stress or, well-being issues, do they come out in the huddles, or is that something you sort of take? Do you notice?
So I would definitely notice. So I guess if we're talking about a call and somebody, I could notice that things that I was said about it or whatever. I noticed then. But I think because we do the same rota, so they see me every day, early to nights. We're also operational. So I'm out and about. I'll go to the hospital and meet them. So there are opportunities that I find that staff will grab you and then say, "Can I have a quick word?" Or if they're struggling a bit. And now it's been nearly a year. I think we've had 33 huddles. So I think people either sometimes mention it and they're happy to in front of everyone, or they'll sort of grab you after the huddle at the end of shift or during the shift and just say, before. The really good thing about that is that after that, I can then follow it up. So the next week, I can check in again or drop them a message and then they see me. So rather than lots of different managers being involved, it will just be me. And I follow up.
No.
So I think the reason we wanted to highlight this is because we know that bringing a flash team together to run what is probably the most stressful patient group we can attend in a pre-hospital environment where you've got traffic, you've got bystanders, you've got other healthcare professionals who happen to be walking past who will want to get involved. We lose minutes, and we know minute means heart muscle, and affects outcomes. So what Tom has evidenced is that through the teams-based working, through everybody knowing each other, a lot of the preparation, which is afforded to hospitals because they get a 10-minute heads up that a patient's coming in, was able to be done seamlessly on scene. And I know you attended one 10 days ago as well, where it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And for an IRO, they are reporting back to Pauline and myself the difference that they're seeing in the delivery and the seamless delivery of care for cardiac arrest patients. So it's really, really well done.
I was going to ask, so what are the opportunities to share learning, should we say? I mean, there are management lessons, there are patient incidents. So there's something within the team where I'm interested in how you're sharing those learnings. But the second thing is more thematically, you have opportunities to share with other teams. So where you've got practice, how do you engage with your other colleagues and peers?
I think we all talk it on. So my team is, I guess, the CTM group, and we talk a lot, whether it's on WhatsApp groups or seeing them every day. There's obviously some managers I don't see because the nature of the rota. We have some flexibility with our shifts to meet up with them and move that around. I think with the learning, I think with this sort of everyone knowing each other, I think a lot of people don't want to ask questions to people they don't know maybe, or they don't want to, they learn from people that they know. So on a call, this particular call I was talking about, one of the people needed to do a skill, but he was able to do that with the person he knew, and they went through it really well. And I don't know if that would have happened if we didn't know that parallel. I think that learning opportunity came up because they knew each other, and he felt comfortable, and then the whole.
I think the other bit of which is we've started really bringing the CTMs together as a group. We ran 3 CTM clinical conferences earlier in the year. A lot of the content of that was absolutely driven by feedback from the CTM groups about actually this is an area that we'd like to spend a bit more time on. This is an area we want to look understand some of the evidence behind. So actually we brought all of the CTMs into one place to provide that. And actually what we've done with that is then pushed out the contents of that. So actually that can be used in huddles as ready-made huddle content.
That's really good. And that's several fast learners. That's excellent.
Thank you. I was fortunate enough to join a huddle about 6 weeks ago, and it was really good to see it in action. One of the observations I had is some of the team members are very quiet, and I think that's normal for any team. And it's actually the women who are very, very quiet. And I wonder if this, how do you draw out and give the people who are naturally quiet the support or the confidence to talk at the huddles, because otherwise you can get drowned out by the more outgoing members, shall we say.
I think we definitely get to know our teams very well because the concept of how we're working now. So it's nearly been a year. I mean, I could probably tell you where all my team live, most of the situations they're in, just because we have these sort of conversations. So the quiet ones, maybe I think they're probably quiet because they just don't feel comfortable speaking out, but they're probably very strong clinicians out on the road. So I'll bear that in mind. The week before, when I'm sort of seeing what they're all doing, I'm not actively looking to see what they're doing on every single joint, but I might see that they're at an interesting call. And then I won't go up to them and say, I see you did this call. I'll say that day, like, yeah, what have you been up to this week? And then with the hope they might mention that call. So bring that out of them. And then from that conversation in the huddle, say, blah, 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 went to this interesting job. Let's just talk about it. Or I might start talking about that subject and get involved in a minute. So we try, but they're also they all get on really well. So the different characters come out, and we definitely try and pull out the quieter ones just because they're probably not quiet normally, they're probably really good at their job. And so we just try and give everyone a chance, seeing what they've done to the way.
That's what it is.
John, I'm Damien, I'm the Chief People Officer. That's the brilliant staff survey results of North, so congratulations. I have 2 questions for you. Because this was you have quite a mobile workforce. Does this give you an opportunity to recognise colleagues that might be going into distress? And then in addition, does it give you an opportunity of your peers to talk about how you handle these situations differently? Because I feel that you'll have much better connections with people to intervene very early. Whereas I think pre-huddles, we may have struggled in that general.
Yeah,
Your observations.
definitely. I mean, by nature of us working together every day, they will see each other. Some might say, I've just been talking to this person just on the side, just to let you know, I think they're struggling. However, and I think we always have that, we always looked out for each other in the service, but by this way, I'm able to see it so much easier and follow it up, like I said before. So I give it a couple of days, or I might do a job with them after the job and chatting. We might go and get coffee and I just say, how's things? There's people in my team go through quite serious personal things, and I'm aware of it. And every week I'll actually check in, open a conversation. So you're definitely able to see it earlier, and more importantly, I think able to follow it on by one person. So whereas before a different manager would be in the office and chat to them, and then a different person you might not see them for weeks, but now they see me. And it also holds us to account, I think, a bit more, because they have an expectation from us. And if I say I'll get back to you on that Wednesday, they see me Wednesday. So they then sort of will follow up that with me. So it's a two-way thing, but definitely welfare is something what I take very seriously. I think we follow up staff very well now as we see.
Fantastic. That's good.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. And by chance, I actually joined one of Tom's huddles on Monday. It wasn't planned because of this, but actually joined them. And one of the things that was really quite impressive to see from the team is how they all felt like they had the opportunity to.
I'm trying to sell them on the someone told me like, oh yeah, as you might expect, St George's and Lewisham are doing lots of the extra work. People
Ben
love a
Clover needs
crisis.
to mute, please.
Sort of like COVID style blitz spirit, rah rah rah. I'm trying to persuade them to give me some number. I'm going to write a nice.
Yeah.
But the interaction across the team, and what I really particularly noticed, one paramedic was talking about a call that they'd been to, which was a quite unusual case. And there were lots of students also as part of your team, but there was no kind of hierarchy in that conversation. There was a very much a kind of wanting to learn, not a kind of a patient that I'd been to before. So, you know, what did you do? What were the presenting conditions of the patient? So, but it felt like a very balanced environment there. So I just wanted to compliment that. It's very recently having sat through.
Yeah.
It was very good.
From going from I joined as an any support role, which is doesn't exist now, but it was sort of the first role I joined, and then worked your way up and do your degree in different roles. So I know, I think, what it was like to be unqualified or training, and sometimes I think you could get overlooked. So I'm very sure to involve everybody in the stories and things like who are saying that may not have spoken up before. They normally wasn't.
One other question, sorry. Yeah. It sounds really good. I mean, well done on everything you're doing. What's not working and what would you like us? Where would you want help and support?
I don't know what's not working. I think it is. I think it's all working pretty well. I think flexibility within the managers is probably definitely needed, just because of our team, to make sure we're seeing our team. So I support my team. I'm with them every shift. Obviously, I have my team around me that I don't see of the managers as much. So I guess there's probably some work there for our own teams. But I think I don't know what's not working. It seems I haven't done it 3 teams based working, so it's all I've known. But it seems to be working okay from my point of view.
Gary. Tom, I'm Harry Berry, I'm one of the non-executives. I've got a 4-part question. How long is the huddle? Is that protected time where you won't get called during the huddle? What other opportunities for learning are for the team during the course of the week? And is it enough time?
45 minutes. So it's a protected time that we have. Yes, it's enough time because we do it every run of shifts. I guess if we were to do it less, maybe twice a month, we've got a bit more of a longer time. I don't know how that would work, but I think it's enough time for what we do to give them new bulletins. There's also only so much information you can give staff at 6:45 in the morning.
Well, that's what I was wondering, whether it's the right
We have
time for some learning.
an amazing team manager at Wimbledon, Karen, who does all of the huddle information, and we get so much information from everywhere to pass on. So she'll decipher it down and make sure like medical director bulletins are at the top, and so we don't do too much. We make sure that what's in is important and not overloading it, and then put it in the next week. So possibly, what was the last part?
Other opportunities for team learning during the job, on the job.
We also have Teams days as well, which are so an opportunity for us all to go together to do learning. So we can have advanced paramedics and consultant paramedics come in, talk to our team, maternity team booked in to come. I took my team to the mortuary a few weeks ago to watch a post-mortem, which I'm not sure they thanked me for, but they were there. So different opportunities we never would have done really before, all together to learn. And also it's a safer space because now we all really know each other. So that sort of no such thing as a silly question doesn't come up. People are just confident to ask things and get involved. So there's learning all over really, on the jobs, after the job, huddles, the internet.
So I have 4 points to pick up. So in order to get 45 minutes of protected time, we have to do a complete re-rotating of the whole workforce so that you clearly can't have a team doing a huddle and then have patients who are actually getting in care. So there's always another team who are not having that huddle at the same time so that we don't compromise care. That was quite massive. With regards to Shira's point, So there were 181 Tom equivalents, but 181 teams who will be going for about a year. There's clearly variation in how they work. So Damien's team are now doing lots of OD with the teams where they're not all as brilliant as Tom's, so that we do create an environment where everyone can flourish, because this is work in progress. With regard to Rommel's point, there are currently 5 conferences going on for all of the leaders in ambulance ops, and one of the products we're launching at those conferences is a new part of LAS Connect, which is our social media platform, which these are all good things about how to do a huddle in one place, and also a structured set of these are the messages from HQ that we need you to give in the huddles in a nice organised way, and sharing good practice or things that have worked really well. So I guess that was a huddle where as the CTM presented the BCG to share how heart attack had happened with the patient they were looking after. And that's a really wow moment. And I can write that up and put it on this Connect page. So other CTMs could then draw down, you could talk about this. And then the fourth one was one of the things that I was very enthused about when we embarked on the team-based working. We went to talk to the fire brigade. It's the London Fire Brigade. Every station they have has a watch system like ours, and all of the watches are rostered at exactly the same time. So when they go to a multi-pump fire, everybody knows each other because they're always working the same shift pattern. And it is so amazing to hear that we've had exactly that same benefit, that we now got the crews turning up to patients where there are needing multiple people know each other, because it's so obviously going to make a really big impact in patient care. So we can already see that the whole teams-based working has massively made LAS a much better place for our staff to work. The next bit is how do you translate that into we provide even better care because we made a better place to work. And I think what Tom is evidencing is that is true. And then the bit that Mark describes of, well, sometimes you are going to be in a place where you don't know everybody, and giving everyone better skills to do that is really helpful too.
Well done. Oh, Tom, thank you so much. Well done. I think, and you, Daniel, and Damien, I think when I first came, I was quite struck by the absence of this. To turn up to a ambulance station to find supervisors not with their teams, and I think the work you put in place and the work that you're enacting will do is really shown not only the welfare but the clinical benefits. It's another like an engine would for really making this happen, making it work, and know you with person. So well done, Daniel. And to the whole thank you. Sorry to be extended with that.
No,
thank you very much. Very, very. Right, if we go back to the agenda and any apologies for absence, any declarations of interest, minutes of the last meeting, anyone got anything to raise about those minutes? On those pages. I don't think we've got anything with action arising from there. Report from me very briefly. I've been out and about as usual. Went out with an IRO, and it was quite interesting to go and see Right Care, Right Person in action. I did put it in my blog, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much, but to actually see it happen, to see our staff with the police on a very difficult but complicated issue. And I was so pleased to have this experience at IRO, to do a very young DCA crew. The met might be difficult, but it was an awkward one. Combination of crime, mental health, and our IRO, real care for the patient, care for the patient's privacy and welfare, and the way that he handled the relationships. And then I thought it was really good to see this in action and see those difficult ones, those grey areas, which is easy to talk about the simple right care, right person. This is one that sort of bridged that gap between crime and mental health. So I thought it was a really, really good example. And then to go with that IRO to go and do the visits to ambulance stations and see him do his audit checks as well, to see in action about drugs and equipment and things such as that. I attended 2 exercises, one with the LAS and Met Police and one just with the LAS. Pauline was one of those as well. Absolutely brilliant to see our Heart and other teams in action, training for chemical, biological, training for a whole range of different scenarios. What really impressed me was the real-time injects of expertise from our people. I haven't seen it like that before. I've done lots and lots of this. but to see it done in real time, so it was a learning experience where people were, and their style was brilliant as well. But to do intervening just to help people learn from that process rather than being exposed and going to a debrief afterwards. So I thought it was an excellent run out. Went down to Bernard Weather Little House to see our new 111. I thought that was great, really good. Went round with the head of estates. It took me through all of the engineering. So if you've got an hour and a half, walk through basements and rooftops. But again, it rather brought to life the discussions we've had here about the costs and the delays and the complexity of that project was really something. And what I really did notice was the thought that's gone into the layout, the arrangements for the staff. You know, that was really good. And clearly there's a lot of opportunity in that building for us to do an awful lot more. Went to the ACE conference, and I have been elected as the ambulance representative for NHS providers, so unopposed as well. And as Daniel alluded to earlier, we had a good discussion with Dash and colleagues about North West's role as our host, and I think they're a very good hosts. I think our relationships with them are very sound, but I think the area that I wanted to tease out from that was how do we get to where we're at when we're looking at finances for LAS? That if we are having this being decided by the 5 ICS CFOs, there needs to be a clear and proper process for us with along the region on deciding upon our ultimate budget and the performance standards and targets that are associated with that. So I'm positive that we've had a look at this year's process. I would hope that when we're talking about this in next year, that we have an improved process, that we can come back to you where there is some coherence between the funding arrangement being set by the ICSs. I fully understand that they're all in financial challenge times, everybody is, and the targets are being set centrally. So we don't have a divergence between those two matters of a 30-minute here and a 30-second. But as I want to emphasise, I thought North West have been very good hosts to us. We'll continue with that good relationship. But I think there are areas in which this can be improved so that we as a board are fully apprised of the way that this budget is being put together and the performance targets for which the executive team are held to account. Anyone got any questions for me on those points? If not, thanks very much. Then we'll go on to you, Jack.
Thank you. So just picking up one of the things you said. So the first bit of my report is the pictures on the inside of the Brighton New 111 Centre, which I agree with you. I think the team in the States have done a remarkably good job of that. Of course, what you can't see is all the infrastructure that sits behind the screens, essentially, which is what you saw. I think it's something like this 55 kilometres of cabling in the building to make this happen. And in terms of a resilient call centre, we've essentially built a building inside Croydon's city offices that is entirely self-sufficient. And that I think is going to be very good use for the future. The second thing I wanted to highlight was the awful incident in Hayport. And sadly, there have been really quite a lot of very difficult incidents in the last few weeks in London where lots of our team had to do being in places you really wouldn't want them to have to be. And in Hainault, I think we did exceptionally well. Sadiq Khan actually wrote to us to say thank you for the contribution you've made. On demand and performance, we'll come back to that later in the agenda, but I do just want to highlight that so far in April and May, we have been 5% busier than we were in April and May last year. That is a big increase in activity, and our performance has got better despite the big increase in activity, but we'll come back to that later. It's very exciting that we appointed Pauline permanently as our chief paramedic. Lots on TV to talk about it.
I did, yes.
So that's really cool. Since we last met, we've launched our ambulance collaboration with 4 other ambulance trusts in the south of England, and we've got a big conference on Friday to actually say how we're going to translate now being a collaborative into action. As ever, we had lots of visits from stakeholders. Richard Meddings, who's the chair of NHS England, came twice because he so enjoyed the first one, but he overran, couldn't do all the things we'd set up, and said, I want to come back and finish off. So he came back and finished off. Then we had Matthew Taylor, who was chief executive of NHS Confederation, and he was totally wowed by what he saw. And there's a link in the report to the little video blog he made. And I think he really got what we have been saying, which is the ambulance service is really to have a huge role in the whole urgent emergency care system, and coordinating getting patients to the right care in the right place. And we showed it lots and lots about alternative care pathways, how we're doing here and treat, the different response models. I have to say that was really good. You and I have been launching the anti-discrimination charter and making it our position racism and sexual behaviour very clear to the organisation. We have a new staff network for the women of colour, and they have got off to a flying start, and they secured some money for leadership development for women of colour, and that's been going really well. I'm really pleased to say we now have no private ambulance division in London Ambulance Service. We insourced the last private provider, which we were providing our bariatric service at the beginning of April, which in the end meant we took that and all the people who were employed by the private provider and insourced all of them. And the feedback from our in-house bariatric service is really positive. We also started in April being the host of the National Ambulance Resilience Unit. We've made a really safe transition from West Midlands to us. NHS England came to do the first assurance review earlier this week, and they were very satisfied that we've done that well. So Pauline, Natasha and team, good work. The comms team won an award for the best use of digital communication, and that was all about attracting people from a much more diverse background into NAS. We just discovered that the HR team will be shortlisted for loads of awards from the Healthcare People Managers Association. And then lots of including short. There were nice note back here, Tommy. That's so far. And the last thing I wanted to bring out was the charity, which is going from strength to strength. And there's an event you might want to come and join us. We're having a dragon boat race. I've dragooned most of the Exco to form a boat, which is in July. There you go.
Well done. Thank you. Any questions for Daniel on the floor? If not, well done. Thanks very much. So we go on to our performance report, please. So, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, it's quite a lot of detail in the report there. I just want to pick out 4 or 5 points really across the services that we deliver. So colleagues will recall we closed the year for category 1 at 7 minutes 29 seconds. That was a 1 minute 3 second improvement on the previous year. But really pleasingly, our category 2, we closed the year at 38 minutes 39 seconds, and that was a 13 minute 22 second improvement on the previous year. And notwithstanding that we've still got some work to do, I think it does demonstrate we've made some considerable improvements. And if I move to our Emergency Operations Centre, as Daniel was just alluding to, we've had a very busy couple of months to begin the year, so quite a considerable increase in contacts into the centre. However, pleasingly, we've seen a 2-second return on our call answering, which is well within the national standards. And I think that can be directly attributed to the team in stabilising the resourcing that they need to be able to safely answer 999 calls. And they are currently in the process of modernising our team's structure to follow some of the learning that's certainly been taken from ambulance operations. And again, the improvement to our category 2 has continued throughout March and April, respectively 33 minutes and 34 minutes. Despite that increase in activity, we still have quite a way to go in terms of improving. As we see more resource coming online in terms of our clinical resource, I'm confident we'll start to see that that improvement. To support our response to patients, we have invested very heavily in our control room to support hear and treat for those patients where we can safely manage their onward care through telephone triage and advice. And our team within the control room now, our clinical hub, returned a 19% hear and treat rate for April. And that's against a national average of 14%. So considerable work going on within there to safely redirect and support those patients. And again, staying with the clinical hub, our category 2 segmentation work continues to lead the sector. And for colleagues that aren't aware, the category 2 segmentation is for that proportion of category 2 calls who can safely be managed through telephone triage to potentially a different outcome from requiring an ambulance. That's about 40% of our activity. So, and also that team ensure that we maintain safety across our service delivery at times of peak pressure. And then if I just come on to our urgent care centre, so again, they did see some quite high demand throughout April. We had a number of bank holidays where we know traditionally we see a lot of activity through our 111 services. However, again, with the improvements to their resourcing and a more aligned roster pattern to the demand, we've seen a commensurate improvement in their call handling performance and the safe management of those patients. Alongside that, we've also seen an improvement in the contact with patients through our clinical assessment service within their targeted time frame. I should pause at that point, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mia. Questions?
Question. Paulie, could you say more about hospital handover delays? Because that sort of jumps out in terms of the report, in terms of, obviously we've just got up to March here and you've said that it has ticked up, but you look at figure 2.
Yes.
Makes the case of the impact on category 2 and hospital handover delays quite starkly. So I'm sure you could say more about what we're able to do to support colleagues with that.
Yes, so all hospitals have pressures at different times throughout the day, sometimes and throughout the month, but we are seeing a particular challenge in the north of the river, in the north central area, and that is having quite a knock-on effect around a number of different hospitals. So we have a number of different measures in place. So the hear and treat that I spoke about, we are predominantly focusing across that north central and the implications it has for the northeast and the northwest to manage as much activity and as much patient contact as we can through hear and treat. We're also managing some of the on-day activity into different hospitals when we can safely do that through some of the peripheral postcodes that sit between two of the hospitals. I think it's fair to say it does take up quite a bit of capacity to manage that activity. And of course, whilst we've got ambulances waiting for patients to be handed over, there's a commensurate risk that we carry of not being able to get to those patients that are awaiting an ambulance. And that's where we use our hear and treat capacity to have that oversight of safety as best as we can.
Thanks, Paulie. Fernanda, I'm just thinking about building on what Paulie has said. Clearly the challenge, North Central, looking at figures seem to be very much focused around the North Middlesex. What are the issues from your perspective?
So we're continuing to work very closely with North Middlesex. They are a very busy emergency department with a very large catchment area to serve their patients. And they have had some challenges in being able to offload our patients that have been conveyed in. So the processes that we're doing is making sure that we do hand over the patient in 45 minutes if they haven't already been handed over, that we convey only patients that need to go to their emergency department and access their same day emergency care services where we can, and also to work with them around building opportunities in the community. We've got a small number of patients that are from a postcode being taken to neighbouring hospitals with their agreement in order to be able to manage that flow. And there's very close work happening at an operational level, at a medical director level, and an exec level to continue to support it.
It would be safe to say that there are continuing challenges.
The challenges are continuing.
Anything further to add?
So I think we have raised our concerns about the impacts that today's and North Middlesex are having on our performance in North Central London, which is really about the length of time it is taking us to get to the patients who have components, as well as the patients who are waiting to hand over. We're having more than daily communication between us, North Central London ICS, North Middlesex, and Royal Fleet and the region about it. I think everyone is taking the issue very seriously. And I'm hoping in the next few weeks they improve.
Clearly very concerning area of work. And again, will keep us apprised of developments as far as that's concerned. Anything else from colleagues on anything else from yourself? Thanks very much for that. Thanks.
Thank you. So I will take the quality report as read and just highlight a few areas. So building on from Tom and Mark having joined us at the beginning to talk about cardiac arrest, you will see that although the national reporting for the clinical ambulance quality indicators is always a little bit in arrears, our internal data shows that our cardiac arrest return spontaneous circulation. So when the heart starts beating again for a patient in cardiac arrest, achieved 32% in March, which is absolutely where we want it to be going. And I think we've heard from Tom that the team-based working is definitely helping us to do that. What is also really important is us all getting behind and supporting the delivery of the London Lifesaver campaign. So if we have managed to get a public access defibrillator to a patient and it is a patient who is suitable for being defibrillated, our return of spontaneous circulation goes above 70%. So again, my plea is please encourage everybody to be signed up to be a London Lifesaver. Our cardiac arrest outcome is also helped not only by the clinical team managers, but by our advanced paramedics in critical care. And this month, they have celebrated 10 years since they were developed as a concept. And I think really important to recognise the importance they bring to being able to advance the practice of paramedics and to take even higher quality care to our patients with a broader range of medication, a broader range of skills that they have for both medical patients and trauma patients. And really importantly, the amount of commitment that they put into becoming an advanced paramedic. So a very competitive process to get in, a huge amount of study time that they undertake on their own, but we see the outcomes very positively in patients. I'd also just like to bring to the board's attention that unfortunately over last year we had reports of over 750 physical attacks on our members of staff. A proportion of those, a high proportion, is where the clinical condition of the patient results in them behaving in a way that can cause either physical or verbal injury to our people. We have, however, supported each one of those members of staff who have reported it with our violence reduction team to be able to provide that support. And we've heard about the clinical team managers and the support they provide. And we've had 19 successful prosecutions for our people. In the first month of this financial year, we've had nearly 50 physical assaults. So it is certainly something we're keeping an eye on and making sure that all the support, both through the wellbeing, through operations and through the team managers, is there to be able to look after every little. From a call handling, Pauline has explained and talked about the fact that our call handling has improved significantly. We continue to take a very high number of 999 calls. But our quality assurance of the standard that we are providing for those calls that we're taking has been submitted to the Academy, and we're very pleased to say that we have again been accredited as a Centre of Excellence which means that we are continually achieving both the call answering and the standard of the call taking to be able to reach that. And there are only a very small number of services in Europe that have achieved that. And then finally, we have started our quality improvement programme, so our Directorate of Quality Improvement and Regulation LEGO programme for a week to look at what happens when clinicians arrive and get ready to go out on their shift, and what processes could we streamline, could we make leaner, could we be able to make easier for them to be able to get out and to be responding to patients. And we found that in a pilot environment, we were able to halve the amount of time that we think, and took some really positive learning forward from that pilot to be able to look at what is replicable in the normal day and across the wider service. So a very positive start to our team.
I thought that last point was really interesting to see quality improvement really making a difference. I mean, in a sense, I've seen lots and lots of different QI projects, but this one seems to be really focused and really does seem to make some difference. If we can spread that makes a real difference to the time our staff are available. Thank you very much for everything. The rest of the report. Any questions more for Leather? Please.
I want just, and I know this is the March report, but just wondering around the medical equipment incidents. Because remember we had an intervention on that, and now I'm reading that in the last 4 months we've seen an increase in the incidents. Has that improved since those interventions have taken place?
So they are improving, and what we are noticing is that with teams-based working, we are getting more reports of things. The really big change is that with the tethered vehicles, the equipment, so the vehicles that belong to a group station, the equipment is now belonging to that ambulance. And so we had a big conversation yesterday on our weekly conversation with the whole trust around the equipment is now belonging to that group station. And so the number of incidents that are being reported is going to be monitored on the station and the intervention.
Sure.
Vanilla, thank you for a really detailed and clear report. Just 2 questions. One about overdue incidents, which is the big slide 64 of the pack. I just note that there are about 130 overdue incidents by level of harm at the top, so death and severe. And if you could tell us a little bit more about how we're addressing the backlog of resolving those. And then similarly, we look further down about overdue actions, which is 69 of the pack. And there are a couple of actions which seem to have been outstanding for a few years now. So one is 2020 development tool, which could be used by clinical staff when providing medication therapy. If it's 4 years on, is it still something is it still relevant? I suppose is the question.
Thank you, Cher. So on overdue incidents, we have now got a quality governance assurance manager and a quality support officer in every area of the organisation who are focused on being able to help to address these. We're beginning to bring together the no harm and low harm into teams so that we can learn much more quickly and get responses out and be able to share the learning. With regards to the moderate, severe and death, the incidents that I've reported here are as they are reported into us. They then come to a weekly patient safety investigation group, which I co-chair with Pauline. There is no delay in reviewing those incidents. So those come through on a weekly basis, and the grade of the incident is not changed until we've completed the investigation. So we leave it as such. There are also local weekly looking at the low and moderate harm. So we have got a process, and we have got it on our risk register about making sure that that number of outstanding incidents is being addressed on a monthly basis through our performance meetings. With regards to the overdue actions, the patient safety group has got a very clear plan, and I'm going to report on that at each board to provide the assurance that those actions are either still relevant and we haven't moved on a long way, because now we've gone to a lot more digital technology. Things are being updated, but also that they're being closed in a timely way.
Thanks.
Yeah, then, oh, sorry.
I just think on a short, when you, when we get the agenda item on our business, see that one of our objectives is to reduce the number of moving students and to do the whole process much more quickly because it is taking too long.
Yeah.
And it's one of our backers.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, very good.
So I just wanted to ask about the violence against staff piece, which is standard, it seems now in London. But I just wanted to ask about the recent spate of shootings across London and whether staff were safe, and you were happy with safety and what they were feeling about it. It's slightly tangential, I understand, but
So if I start and then I'll bring Pauline in from when we get alerted to a violent situation, the crews are advised to attend to an RVP. And so if there is still a concern about an assailant or an alleged assailant being on scene, they would wait until they're told that it's safe or the patient is brought to them in order to be able to do it. I think there is no way we could avoid acknowledging that it is an extremely distressing situation. The number of shootings, the number of stabbings that we're seeing and being reported through to us is how we're linking back in through the huddles, through the welfare and through the wellbeing team, and making sure that anyone who has been deployed to those is being offered the trauma risk intervention straight away.
I'm not sure there's much more I can add around that, other than obviously all the crews now on every group station have access to the body worn cameras. So I know that doesn't quite address the specific violence around guns and knives, but in terms of the opportunity to sometimes de-escalate situations, and we are seeing an uptake people using those body worn cameras.
Okay, any further questions? So, just a quick admin point, I know some jackets going on, is people feeling a bit cold? That's what we're on, or do you want to stand up a bit?
I think we get the benefit of the air conditioning on our side.
Is everyone happy? I think that was, I'm not being, I'm just I didn't know, spotting a few people looking a bit chilly, I thought that was all. That's my welfare check. Right, well, we'll steam on. Okay. Right, okay, all right, any further questions? Well, if not, thanks very much indeed. Mark, please.
Thank you very much. Well, just a brief report to summarise what we've been doing in Quack. You've seen the new draft report format, and we had some comments around that. Looked at 999 performance, particularly hospital handovers, and looked at some proposals for the quality account. Happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Mark at all? If not, thanks very much. We'll go on to people and culture, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will take my report as read, just to highlight some key things. So, firstly, continuing great news on the apprenticeship programs. They were recognised again with awards during February. The report goes into detail about KPIs. They're all very positive. Vacancy sub 5%. Pipelines are very strong. Retention is slightly down. Schools go up. Really the KPI. Absence is stable as well. We also agreed a workforce plan of zero growth, and we have the ability to tweak that with the strength of our pipelines as a point. There were two core pieces of work to highlight. The first one is our people scorecard. So the aim is to increase transparency, ownership, and ultimately performance. But it means our student objective is a great place to work. Because unfortunately, as you know, some of our people operations, such as disciplinary grievances, have negative impacts on our staff, and doing this in a timely manner is critical. So we've opened up transparency. The second big piece of work, which is continuous, is the transformation board for scheduling, and we're working towards devolving some central tasks that would empower our managers. Again, it's a strategic objective as a great place to work. I won't labour any further points. They might be to written form. I can take questions.
Questions for David? Yes, please.
Damien, and I think I wrote you about this, but I think it's great to see the KPIs. I just wanted to say that because I think that level of transparency is really going to hopefully on that side, and really great to see it. My question was around the stay interviews, and forgive me if we talked about this before, I just couldn't recall. Are there any themes indicated, and can we meet expectations of staff with respect to those themes?
Yeah, so the big intervention of stay interviews took place in our ones.
Okay,
And having done that, we started to see a sliding scale on retention. So it significantly reduced. I think that information sharing with our management team is really current.
You mean retention got better?
Yes, that's not fair.
great, yeah,
I think it was circa 10%.
yeah.
And it's not in the place we want it to be, it's a work in progress, but it is sliding down. In terms of themes, unfortunately, it was so on that scale of a portfolio, I couldn't give you a full theme. There were so many different variations that we couldn't really get trends together. Some people really liked the flexibility of the rosters, some people didn't. And it was hard to balance it out. But I think what people really enjoyed is the engagement with the team and just expressing their views. And then any personal issues we then quickly picked on.
Thank you. Yes. So you mentioned Cheshire. I think Sheila was going to cover Cheshire potentially on the digital. I think we have.
Fair.
I think in recent weeks we've really begun the complexity of what LAS has created in Cheshire and how we really have to simplify it and to all this. And there is a lot of IT complexity in all of this as well. So I think Cheshire will come back many times to the board in the next year.
What's our time scales for that? There's a lot to involved, isn't there? So developing this out to sensitive.
So the exercise is started in terms of what responsibilities that our managers want to take to make their day job more efficient. This is on the back of a system that we are working with to make it more user friendly for the easiest way to do it. The level of that complexity, I can't underestimate it. And I should also say, just for the minutes, that some of the more challenging part of the system took place post the culture meeting, so we have the opportunity to improve that.
Okay, thank you. Now that
Sorry, thank you, David. Just a question on the people's scorecard, which is 115. Just noticed that some of the targets, particularly for EDI, for stronger disabilities, gender, BAME staff, they're still to be confirmed. Do we have a time frame?
Yes, we do. So with the scorecard, we've not taken a universal approach. So the scorecard is now localized in each directorate. So for example, the diversity expectation and requirements will be very different from a non-diverse area. So they've actually all been populated by directorates per directorate. So it'll be about 5 or 6 scorecards. I think we're in the final stages of signing that off, and then we'll go to our performance meetings to be localised and managed in that capacity.
And as a board, we'll get some oversight.
So yes, and I'm very, I mean, what I suspect will happen is we'll reflect this a lot more in the people culture committee and we'll combine that. But this is what our team's got to do. And it's a big measure to unblock any issues that are not immediately transparent.
Yeah.
Thanks for the sure. Give us all the time. And please.
Thank you. So I'll take the report as read. I've just, so a few things just to flag. I mean, Damien sort of glossed over the progress that we've had on the call handler to frontline. And I don't have the latest on it, so he may well be able to update us. But you can see from my report that we were aiming to increase diversity significantly with this programme. And you can see that as a point of writing, over 51% of people who'd expressed an interest in the programme came from a BME background. And interviews, as I understand it, were happening this last month and early this month. And I don't know if it's too early to know the outcome of that, but I think it looked very, very positive. And I'll come to this in our EDI update, but I think that's an example of where, you know, we have been quite bold as a board to do something very different in terms of trying to shift the dial in relation to the challenges we have in terms of diversity. And so far, it's something that's going to have a big impact, so it's important to know that. On resourcing, I just want to commend, you know, the team. Again, huge progress in turnover and recruitment, to the extent that the committee had a discussion about whether we needed further assurance on that. So that's just really, really well done. Scheduling, I'll leave to Sheila's update. A couple of other things just to flag, I think. On the workforce planning, we were presented with the workforce plan at the stage that it was at. One of the things the committee discussed was, and the board has discussed previously, was wanting to understand how productivity assumptions, which were referenced in Pauline's report in terms of efficiency, were then going to play through to workforce numbers, because we're obviously making an assumption that we'll require less people versus the demand if we can spend less time on things. So we wanted further assurance on that. Two other things just to draw out that people will have seen. One is we've had an update on the OD programme. And there's a lot of progress in terms of pulling that together in a much more coherent way. Where we wanted further assurance was to understand how it was impacting the frontline staff, i.e. the awareness of frontline staff of the culture programme. And so that's something we'll return to. And lastly, quite importantly, we took a paper on freedom to speak up, and in particular the recent survey on freedom to speak up. And members will have seen that whilst people were aware of their ability to freedom to speak up, there was a concerning number of people who didn't know how to. So that is something that we're going to ask the executive to take away in terms of increasing awareness so that people know how to raise a concern should they wish to do so. So I'll just pause there and invite them to the
Any questions for Aaron? If not, thanks very much.
So on EDI, there's really two flag in relation. So people can see the progress that has been made, and indeed there has been a lot, in particular our ability to report our position in relation to the various regulatory arrangements that we have. Members would have seen that we discussed RES and DES data, the latest data on that. And whilst there is progress on DES, there is much less progress on RES. There is some progress, but in some areas it remains stubborn to shift. And so the main thing that we discussed as a committee is the need for us to really assure ourselves that we do have the right actions to impact on those indicators. And so we resolved as a committee that what we need to do is ask the executive to relook at the plan, and then come back to the committee in terms of their assurance that we do have the right actions and that there are some further things that we need to do. And to that end, I'm meeting with Luke Roger and the EDI team next week to start that process to have a look at that. Because as a committee, I think I've said before, we're very keen to provide support to say, are there fewer bolder things that we should do? And that's what we're encouraging people to do. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight, and people will see, is that we had a deep dive into conduct cases. Members remember that we have been keen to do this for a while. There's been a very good piece of work which has then shone a light, particularly as people will have seen, on attendance reporting in POC. And we had a good discussion about not jumping to conclusions about why that was in terms of why would people more likely to go into a disciplinary process, but ask for further work to be undertaken in order to understand that more fully. And I understand that that is underway, and I can report back for the outcome of that due course of the next report.
Thank you very much. Questions on EPI?
And thank you. I completely agree with what you said about the red indicators. I was really quite concerned when I saw what was in the report, because I looked up how we compared with the national and region for the indicators 2 and 3, and we're doing worse, both on the national level and against London. So I do think that's something we need to focus on as an organisation, because we have to think about, you know, what are our staff feeling when they're applying for a promotion, knowing they're going into the process with things stacked up against them. It doesn't help morale, it doesn't help well-being, it doesn't help patient care.
Exactly, Sharon. That was the conversation that we had, in the sense that there's a lot we have done. I don't want to say, you know, we have done a lot. We have provided training, we've got independent panel members. There's a whole range of things that we've done. But the frustration as a committee is that at the moment it's not shifting the dial on those indicators, as you rightly say, and therefore we need to look again to say, are there other things similar to what we're doing in core handbooks and frontline that we need to be looking at, we need to be bolder.
So I suppose the question is, how do we learn from best practice? Because there are other trusts and organisations who have shifted and dialed. Maybe Roger, you could comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's just worth just taking a step back on it. We've got a mixed picture here. So we've got better. We've got staff survey showing we've got better at looking at disability. We've got an increase in the number of people back in my mentioned back in the organisation. We've gone to 1 in 4 from 1 in 4 about 1 in 5. We've got some good initiatives going on career development, and you'll highlight of one earlier, women of colour, and Anne's highlighted another one there. We've got symbolism around the charters that we're producing, so being really clear to the organisation about what behaviours are expected. We have, you know, deep-seated challenges on these particular questions, and you're right, as was that one of those indicators, on indicator 3, which we thought was going down, our latest data shows that it's going up. So we need to have a real go at that and really think carefully about what we can do to move that. I think one of the answers here is about accountability of managers and their decisions, and making all that transparent, thinking about what inclusive leadership really is, and doing more on that particular area. That's our kind of focus for the next phase of this. So we're thinking of, in the period of about a year, made quite a lot of progress, but these are quite deep-seated issues, but we're determined to go after them, and we will then go back to this absolutely. Thanks, Richard.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that I had a call with the team. I think you asked them. And, I just shared some best practice from private sector in my experience, and actually the 2 points are the 2 points that I was talking about, and it's very layered, and it was my experience. We talked about that. So I think the accountability piece, yes, but I think we need to be prepared to sort of be very persistent in this area and keep going underneath, delayering it. And therefore, I think the focus was my experience in having focus on a few areas as opposed to trying to spread ourselves across multiple areas. Did actually move the dial, but it came down to starting with measuring and reporting on it and accountability, but then actually being very curious around what's going on in each of these areas and what can we do with our managers, with our, our recruitment team to actually unpack this, because some of it will be experience biases. I want people who are like me. Some of it will be, I didn't even understand that's what was going on. And it takes time. It's not going to be a quick fix.
And even the deep dive that we did on this, which we've not done that before. As to put under this bit more, and that's putting out sorts of questions from particular areas of the organisation that they're having to think completely about, and all that process is difficult. It's good.
So I guess just building on what Stuart made, do we actually have the data to delayer and actually dig into what the issues really are? Because that's the only way you're going to get at this. You need to do it with fact and remove the emotion. And it's a lot of emotion. But how are we using it and where do we see it?
Aaron?
Yeah, I guess my comment at EDI committee was that we spent enough time measuring, and we've measured and measured and measured it, and we know we've got a problem. I think we've done a lot in the past, but we've done the standard things that everybody does, and we've got to a certain point, but no further. I felt at the last EDI meeting, it was a bit wishy-washy, to be honest. For something that is so important. And I think the discussion was around, I guess it's worth highlighting is that people need bold, we need bold action that is very visible in this, I think, to make things happen. I don't think we can talk about let's measure some more stuff. I honestly don't think it's about delayering and getting to the bottom of it. I think it's about very visible action, both carrot and stick, and focused, and we need 2 or 3 things. And I also think the EDI people need to be empowered to come up with those ideas and then to deliver them.
The only thing is I'd say,
Sorry.
gotta make it sustainable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But and I think that's, some of the things that we've done in the past, there have been a couple of events where we have been hard hitting, but I don't think we've sustained that hard hitting approach.
So just sort of relating a conversation you and I were having yesterday, and I think we likened it to making sure we don't cut off the wrong thing. So so when you make an intervention, let's make sure it's the right kind of intervention. And I'm not sure we've been making the right kind of interventions. So I don't want to kill us with data, but how do we know we're making the right interventions? I guess is my question.
So I think we're in the place in this space where we can see which bits of the organisation have a problem. So at one level, you don't need to get any more data. But understanding why those bits of the organisation have a problem is much harder and isn't so much in the data as actually looking at the problem, talking to people and looking at what actually has happened. And I think since the EDI committee, where you made a really powerful, this isn't good enough suggestion, I think we've really understood 2 wicked problems in one area of the organisation that we didn't understand. And you can see exactly why things have happened, where people aren't being deliberately racist. We've just set up processes that just get you an outcome. Then you change it. So I think when we come back to the next EDI committee, I think we'll be in a much stronger place to say we do actually understand 2 things that have gone not right, and this is what we're going to do about it, and that will actually make it fairer for everybody as a result. So I think we're getting quite close to resolving some pretty long-standing issues. So that was the first point. I was going to move on to Des.
I just want to bring Bob in at the stage for me. Bob, please.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, probably a little bit like Sheila, I say this from the perspective of knowledge of what happens in other places. But it might be helpful, recognising that organisations are in different places, but it might be helpful, Damien, if you spoke to your opposite number at Imperial, who did a very interesting piece of work with Imperial College, to picking up Karim's point about we've got lots of data, we've done lots of interventions, but can we demonstrate sustainably which are the ones that work? And they came down to 2 or 3 particular interventions that you could demonstrate made a sustainable difference. And it was a bit more nuanced than, it was something quite nuanced about panel makeup. And it was something quite explicit about appointing panels, justifying their selections in a formal manner to senior management. And there were a couple of other things too, but they really did appear to make a dial move. Recognising completely that
I'm just in another meeting.
Different organisations are in slightly different places, but there may be some specific learning there that could be helpful in the context of where you're wanting to get the EDI improvement piece too.
Go for it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It is very nuanced.
Sorry?
It's very nuanced.
Yeah. Yes. Carol, please.
So just one other point. I mean, I think Daniel is right. And the other thing I reflected after EDI is that one of the things we said is I don't think we're a racist organisation. And I think that's actually true. I don't think we are, but I do think that there are other things going on in the organisation, and one of them is I think that there is still a legacy hierarchical system which can spill over into bullying. And when you layer that with maybe some unconscious biases, you end up with something that looks like the res. So I think there are other aspects of the culture programme which feed into this, and we won't solve it only by dealing with it as a race issue. If it goes through the wider culture, it's a good point. Yeah, certainly. Thanks for the advice, Robert. I'll speak Roger and connect with the Imperial, which I did. The only thing I'd say, I think we might be doing something a little bit of a disservice here, because we have commissioned best practice. We know what NHS will recommend we've gone through that. I think the point that Karim and Anne have made with is we have to do something that is really bold. And just to give a bit of positive ending to this subject is the reference that Anne made to 400 to AAPs involved all those bold interventions that are not just your bog standard aspects of possibly the same thing that Imperial done. And that has resulted in a 50-50 appointment success. So I think the off-the-shelf, are you doing this? We're ticking those boxes easily. Are we doing the really bold interventions and move the direction on? I think we started that journey. That would be my assumption, but certainly we don't think we're in a decision not to take support from other trusts and even university education, which was still wanted.
And just another thought, which is that some of it's not the case that we've implemented a whole lot of interventions and we can see they didn't work. So if you take that particular example that Bob was just highlighting, so I haven't learned specifically from the Imperial example, but we just this week done a training program for our independent panel members. We're establishing a process for them to sit in on interviews and verify that in a formal way that they felt the process was independent. It's one example, but that process is not coming into effect. So some of this stuff is sort of still in. It isn't that we've completed the stuff and finished it. We've started these processes, but we haven't completed them yet. So it's in some sense, it's not a surprise that they haven't had an effect yet.
No, I think there's clearly an appetite for us to spend more time on it. And we had an exchange after the last meeting, and I think I was trying to describe it. It was like a stock take. Where are we? what are the issues we've got. And I think borrowing is pride from others is absolutely what we should do, be it from the private sector, be it from the Imperial, or dare I say it, my old trust officers, which has made a lot of progress on this, on very hard, tangible, measurable outcomes. You know, not too much rhetoric, very straightforward, different scenario, different staff makeup without a doubt. But I think there is good practice, but it's not to undermine what's already doing now. Just on that sort of bold action, it's going to be the bold actions going to do something, and to pick up somebody else's point that this it's going to be sustainable. Colleagues in emergency services across London have been mired in this for a long time. They've made some progress, backwards on others. This is a real challenge without a doubt. And the NHS across the board, there's got no shortage of allegations of bullying and poor behaviour. We've got the chance here, I think, to be exemplars in really good behaviours and good outcomes. So measurable ones that I hope within 6 months, 12 months time, when we can look at each other and say, we've moved this, we've shifted it, that it is sustainable, we have made a difference. This is a good place to work, a safe place to be. I'm absolutely determined, and I'm really enthused about the energy that everyone's showing towards this. And I just need to be thinking with you, Anne, about how we do this. I mean, you're going to be picking it up from your perspective, but I think this board wants to really engage in this. I think this is very simple.
I think my suggestion, Andy, was going to be following the discussion with Roger and the team, that we've had one of our development sessions where once the executive had some thoughts and bring it back to the full board, because I think it's such a critical issue. The whole board needs to have an opportunity to input, and then obviously the EDI can take it.
Next away day, we've got, well, now what we've got to say, we have got a couple of relevant items, haven't we?
So the July development session, we've got freedom to speak up, and we've also got sexual safety.
Yeah, so we've got some inputs from externals on that. They might set us up for a bit more of a discussion. Thank you, everyone, for you wanted to this.
I did, but you did such a good summary up that we've got some bold stuff we've done on desk. We'll take to the EDI committee. Yeah, could never report back. I was like,
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Right, finance. It's lighten the mood.
Got loads of money here.
Yeah, so I'm going to report in the other areas our board to see, like, just point out a couple of key things. So the report talks about reporting the first month of this new financial year, and as we discussed earlier, number of board meetings from public and private, especially this year, has been difficult. And further activity has gone up over the last 18 months. So we have posted a deficit as an overspending and that is the first time that has happened for some time. So that clearly indicates that there are financial pressures that we're facing. As you talked about earlier, there will be another return later in the month. But the sort of the optimistic, the sort of good thing is that capital program is the highest funding allocation we've had since I've been there, just over £21 million. So the exec team are putting a capital program together and come to the next week for review and approval. So I think that's really exciting for us. It enables us to do lots of things we've been wanting to do. So let's flag that out. The fleet, now we have increased our DCA size from 530 to 580 now. So we have 580 ambulances, but we are still continuing to bring new ones in, commission new ones in. And what this allows us to do is now roll out non-US deployments and continue to commission other vehicles. As states will talk about where we need 111 qualifications. I've just briefly mentioned our medical equipment and our app to program app scanning app that allows us to track equipment. It has been a slow uptake, but it's now, I think, we've got some momentum, so that will hopefully aid us with this equipment and the sustainability program goes on and make ready with make some very changing program as well. So of course, the questions,
Thank you, Rakesh. Any questions for Rakesh? If not,
Thanks for
just sorry.
sorry. Just make ready. I mean, there's been a lot of good progress. I just want to check, is that still the integration, of that cadre of people? Is this working well?
So we've now in-house that it's been about 18 months or so. So that's sort of bedded down. There are still a number of teething problems. This is a group of staff who are not used to being managed in the NHS environment. They have been managed in a private sector environment, and that's different. We've actually, there was no management infrastructure to manage these staff. We've now got infrastructure in place. We're now looking to do some efficiency programs with them. So there's lots of scope for making more efficient. That was always the second phase of the business plan that came to fit on board. But also we're now working on a program which fully is regional around much more localized ownership of things, including Make Ready. So we've done the fixed fleet, so the local managers on the ambulances working towards it. Now we're now looking to localized processes, including Make Ready and scheduling. So again, that will change the way they work and how they interact with the patient staff.
Thank you. I mean, part of the reason I was asking the question, I'm sort of coming at this from in a hospital care setting as well, where, the reliance that the frontline clinicians and nurses have on facility staff, the porters and others. And a lot of this stuff is outsourced in different hospitals. And the question comes, I mean, is there best practice to learn from the experiences we've had in integrating an element of the workforce that we can share, perhaps, with others?
So the bit I was going to add was, so when one of the spoke about the QI project on the start of shift, one of the things that became really apparent when you had essentially the Make Ready and the paramedic people together for a week to work out the start of shift process was that actually our paramedics are repeating a huge amount about what the Make Ready staff have already done. And that was sort of fine when the Make Ready staff were all employed by a different organisation to our paramedic staff. And I don't think it took very long when they were designing it to think, hang on, we're all one team. If we're all one team, can't I rely on what my colleagues in Make Ready have already done, and I don't have to do it all over again? That penny dropping moment was really profound. And then it clearly during the week when they were working together, they then all worked together as, hang on, we're one team for our patients in Elliot Ambulance Station. Let's redesign the process that makes the best use of all our skills. 18 months ago, that would have been an impossible set of conversations to have. So do I think that insourcing all of these people is good because you now pay them a sensible London living wage for most objective change? And that's good for them. Now I think we're about to get the benefits of actually we can make it better for patients because we can work together digitally to get our crews out on the road quicker. But we wouldn't have done that without doing this. That's really good. Thank you.
Yes, Bob, please, I think.
Thanks, Chair. And in fact, just to Rommel's point that he just mentioned, I think you're seeing across the service a number of insourcing operations, and it's all about the cohesion of team working and the improvement of the sort of the service to the end patient. It really is quite marked. So far as the assurance report for FIC is concerned, it's very early in the year, Chair. I mean, we affirmed 23-24 financials position, and we looked at the early reports for finances in 24-25, but we are only looking at month one, albeit in a comprehensive way. I mean, there's a general level of frustration that here we are in June and we're still talking about potential funding changes, which inevitably will have an implication either on our budgetary position or our service offering. And the sooner that comes to a close, the better. it's early days in the delivery of our efficiency plan for this year, which we know is challenging, but the process of identification and the methodology behind it is quite robust. And we've had some good deep dives in the past about certain areas of the organisation and their cost improvement journey, and we'll continue to do that. And we reviewed the BAF risks for that have been put forward, and we'll deal with that at a board. But I suspect, well, I know that the comments we made was I think we're likely to have to look at our BAF risks in the finance area in a bit more granular way than we might have done in previous years, just because of the challenges in both efficiency, the overall funding budgetary position, and the demands on service, which a number of colleagues have alluded to in earlier presentations. And I will continue to do the monthly finance review, even in those months that we don't have the formal assurance committees, because I think 4-5 will continue to be a challenge for us. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions for Bob at all on that? If not, thanks very much. Audit, please.
We haven't had a meeting actually.
Ah, right.
So I don't have anything to say. The audit, internal audit program, I think, has been we signed off on.
Yeah.
No, apart from that, nothing else to say.
Just all progressing okay on audit?
Yes, I've got a close down meeting on Monday.
It can't have any issues.
Yeah.
It's to be around it means.
So actually, I think, I mean, as I said, we're close down meeting on Monday, but there is some issues.
Good. So far, so good. Excellent. Thank you very much. Charitable Funds Committee, please, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. I hope it's pretty self-explanatory, but there's some quite positive moves in our ability to be attracting funding, albeit from a national perspective, which brings with it an element of restriction on what you can use the funds for. But it's very positive. The charity plans for this year are forming nicely. There's a good basis of foundation now based on the work that colleagues did in 3-4. There are two things that we are going to have to come back to. Firstly, we will need to ensure that there is some level of trustee training at the board here, and we're looking at both what a short, sharp programme might look like, and how we could find the time to squeeze that in appropriately, because the responsibilities of a trustee are different to the responsibilities of being an executive or a non-executive director of a trust, and people need to feel comfortable with that. And we're looking at trying to put some real rigour around how we deal with applications to a limited hardship fund. We want to try and make it as specific and rule-based as possible, so that we can remove the judgmental element out of looking at applications, and that's something that the committee will be coming back to in later meetings. Happy to take questions.
Thanks so much indeed, Bob. Any questions for Bob on Charitable Committee? If not, very grateful. Thanks very much. If we move on now to corporate, please, Mark.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight a couple of issues. First of all, on complaints, the number of complaints in our response times are more or less unchanged, although there has been quite a lot of scrutiny of the largest category of complaints, which is behaviour. Mark referred to the discussion which happened at Quack on the work we've done on getting a bit more into depth into the nature of some of the behaviour complaints that we've had. That was off the back of more extensive analysis of behavioural complaints that took place at CCOG, which is the group which reports into plan. I guess the main thing for me is that what we're trying to do is make sure that the flow of information on behavioural complaints gets to the right people, the right operational managers. So the operational managers can pick up where there are recurring patterns or particular individuals that they need to pay closer attention to. We have now substantively appointed the 2 managers of the complaint service who've been acting with us for about a year. So I think that kind of continuity will help build the relationships and help build a deeper understanding of what's going on. Second thing I wanted to mention is the work we do on information governance towards the DSP2 standard at the end of this month. I would say we've got very high levels of confidence that we will achieve the DSP2 standards. We are
For 9 colleagues who don't know what that means.
It's security and protection toolkit. So it's an assurance process, which means that essentially our information security arrangements are strong. And it's an essential standard because if we're not compliant with it, we're not allowed to bid for certain work. So the 111 bids, for example, if it couldn't demonstrate certain DSP2 compliance. So I guess the message is that we've got a good information in support from cyber security. So we're very confident getting that. And finally, just to mention, we've got policy compliance up to 90% date. We did have a small number of policies that were quite significantly out of date. We actually remedy that. So the next policies that we're targeting are just a few months on the program, rather than that. I have to take some questions. Thank you.
I think just underlining, given we're in the middle of a cyber attack here in London, I think it's in terms of whether it sits in DSPT or whether it sits more technical aspects of cyber, but I think just, being constantly checking our third parties and their security posture, so that supply chain, which seems to be where the bad actors are attacking. They're looking at weaknesses in the supply chain. So I just think, whilst it's great we've made progress, we have to be constantly asking the question around, are our third parties as robust as they say they are?
Well, that falls more to Claire than it does to me, but there is a very good relationship between the 2 teams.
Yeah.
Yes, can I just pick up one point? I think because I've been dealing with it live, if you like, from the point of view of checking that the recent London incident is around attacking a pathology provider that's affected King's and St Thomas's, and at the Homerton we're also in a pathology partnership. So we've been checking to ensure we don't have vulnerabilities there. I'm not sure yet completely. I think we're okay, but the point I think to reinforce that Sheila's made about third party suppliers, and I think the issue of staff awareness, it seems this has come out of the phishing exercise through the pathology provider. So, the reliance on third parties and who we go out there and how much control they actually have, security control that is quite important.
Yes. So the aspect of that which does fall within DSPT is the information governance training, which does of course cover things like don't click on phishing links. And that's one of the reasons why we are such persistent nags in getting the entire organisation to demonstrating 95% compliance with the training. If you look at the quality report earlier on in the pack, you'll see there's 2 figures for information governance training. One is 100%, the other is 95%. So we have managed to retrain a high level of awareness through the year. But this morning I got a list of the people whose training had expired. So I'm going to go on the back of them, making their managers to make sure that they comply with the notice meetings.
Anyone here?
Comments?
Well, there's no message if those are out. Please make sure we get.
I think, Chair, I don't know if this is a question for Sheila, where I'm directing this, but one of the issues that when there's been cyber attacks before, like WannaCry, was phishing emails, yes, but the vulnerability came from not patching. Yeah. And actually LAS was one of the organisations at the time that was most vulnerable. So I was just wondering what assurance we have, particularly when we've got third-party suppliers, that they are rigorous in patching, because that, as I understand it, my very limited knowledge of these things, is where a major vulnerability comes to these attacks.
Thank you for the expression, Simon. So you're right. I think there's been a lot of focus internally since WannaCry about how we protect our own environments, but not much around our third parties. So NHSE have mandated two-factor authentication for all third parties now who have direct access into the organisations that they support. But that is not easy. And that will take us as LAS, and I'm sure, you know, across the NHS, a long time to implement because suppliers are not up to date. And part of this is we need to do more checks and balances. We do quite good checks and balances when we procure systems and partnerships and services, but keeping those checks going to say, right, you were compliant then, but are you compliant now with your patching cadence and whatever ISO standardizations they're working to? And that's something that we've been looking at internally as to how do we strengthen that kind of relationship and those checks and balances with our third parties, because we give them huge levels of access into our system, which is, you know, what's happened to this issue. And as a result, you know, these things happen, and you know, this one is very similar to the advanced one, and so we are seeing a similar pattern of attack coming into kind of third-party services. But I think it's an area that we absolutely need to look at, and I think there'll be as I said to Rob last night, I think there's a lot of learning that we can take from what's happening.
Since you often talk about 3 lines of defence. And I think in this space, the NHS is very bad at what I would say is the 3rd line of defence. So if the first line is train people not to do stupid things, the second line of defence is ensure that you keep your current systems as up to date as possible on all of the cyber stuff. The third line of defence is, well, what happens if a system gets compromised? What do you do? And I don't think in the NHS we're very good at saying to our suppliers, we expect you to have an entire standalone system that's ready to be switched on should the one that we're currently using not be usable.
Yeah.
Because that's very expensive.
Yeah.
But it is the thing that if Advanced had had that, we wouldn't have the 111 problem. I think if this technology partnership had it, they wouldn't have the problem. It's a bit like why I'm so proud of what we've done in Burning Weatherall House. The 111 is we've essentially built a totally self-contained infrastructure should you not be able to run something online. I think that's where we need, that's the thing that I think LAS needs to be really clear about is what happens if you can't use ERIC or DRS or whatever. Can we just plug it into something else which is brand new and ready to go as the backup system, which is hard, but that's where we have to go.
Just to answer that, I think there's another thing that we need to do, which is around our response. So when these things happen, we saw it with WannaCry, we saw it with the advanced, and we've seen it for this one, the time to respond and the decisions taken by organisations are too slow. And so while we never want to be in a position where this happens, actually practicing what our response to these things are, who we would call on for support, it is something that we should practice in the same way we practice other business continuity arrangements. 100% agree. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything more on that? Mark, that's all. Anything more from you, Mark? Okay, any questions there? Well, thanks very much. Digital data, very.
Yeah, so apologies to the board for no paper, but that's because we met yesterday afternoon, so we didn't submit paper because we wouldn't have had a chance to read it. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of what we covered, and we'll pick up on the scheduling and roster piece as well. So first to say that we reviewed the final version of the digital and data strategy. Yay! So that's really, really good. And that we agreed, subject to a couple of minor inclusions, that we would formally present it for the September board meeting for formal sign-off. But in the interim, we were talking to Andy about potentially having an opportunity for the board to hear from Claire and the team in terms of the big strategic priorities and plans for the next couple of years. So we're trying, I think, get that on the schedule with Mark's help. So second thing to say is that from a data quality perspective, and I'll come back to some of the other big technology and digital components. We had an update on the various actions that are outstanding from the quality reviews that continue to progress. I certainly can see the progress that the team are making. There's a lot of focus on closing out old actions. There's a rolling program of work that's being developed and being updated, and that's really helpful. The one thing I would say is that there's still work to do in terms of just getting a very clear understanding of who owns certain actions so that the team isn't having to chase lots of people to close down actions. We talked about that, and Pauline and the team are working behind the scenes to make sure that's a little bit more robust, because these reviews will continue to come through. And I think it's important that when priority action items are identified, that there is a system behind. Coming on to the rostering and scheduling piece, Damien joined us, and Damien had sent in a report, very helpful report on a review that was done around our rostering and scheduling processes, really with a view to the technology tools that would underpin the processes and some process transformation work that is likely to occur. And so Damien advised us, and I think we talked about this at one of our last meetings, that there's a retendering process that will take place for the rostering scheduling tool, which is called GRS. Now, what occurred over the weekend, and I might defer to Claire in terms of some of the fragility of the system, is that there was an outage of the rostering system, GRS. And I think what it brought to light was, the fundamental criticality of that system and our ability to operate effectively if that system is not available. So it's kind of timely that we're doing the retendering, so we can see how do we shore up and improve the quality of whether it's, we retender and get the same product or whether we get a different product. We don't know the outcome of the retendering yet. But I think it's going to be really important to understand, how do we make sure that we've got a fit for the future rostering and scheduling capability in place. And one of the things that I think we talked about yesterday was the need to make sure that the model we have around supporting that system is very robust, because I think what we identified was, first of all, really understanding and labeling it as a critical system is important. But then secondly, making sure that we're wrapping the right support model around that, whether it's through Claire's organisation or Damien's organisation, to make sure that we understand how the system works and we can intervene quickly if we have a problem. Claire, I don't know if you wanted to comment on, what you observed as part of that sort of fragility of the system.
Yeah, thank you. So I think similar to other systems that we have both in LAS and the wider NHS, it's been years of local customization which haven't necessarily been documented, and the criticality of that system has moved up over the years, which we probably haven't recognised in either an infrastructure perspective or at an application layer. So, for example, GRS is integrated now into our CAD, and therefore it's critical that information passes seamlessly and in a timely way through to CAD so that crews know what they're doing. I think probably when the scheduling system was brought in, however many years ago, it didn't have that level of criticality, and we haven't done the kind of due diligence to review our service capacity. In the meantime, to say actually this should run on faster infrastructure, we should provide more support to it, we should have better documentation, we should have better conversations with our supplier about how they support us in the event of an outage. I think that's the other thing that really came to light over the weekend, was actually the level of knowledge that exists both within the LAS but also within the supplier for our specific version of GRS just wasn't there. And as a result, it took us a long time to recover from that. The operational impact was quite high. And there's a lot of work that we need to pick up off the back of the weekend to try and secure this product as far as we can whilst this retendering takes place.
And as part of that, we agreed to put a new risk on the VAP around our scheduling clustering system. And we spoke to Anne about, because obviously this straddles P&C and digital data. So we've agreed that from a digital data perspective, we will support and provide support to the team and provide oversight around the technical aspects of the retendering process, but also whatever we do beyond that to shore up the application. And then Anne will continue to provide you overarching assurance and oversight around the processes and system components. So we'll do that, and hopefully we won't overlap, but we'll just keep each other informed. Then I think just on a couple of things, just wanted to mention around the call sign work. We spoke, I think, at the last meeting about work that we'd agreed to do around standardising our call sign structure. So we have at LAS a call sign structure that differs from the national processes. So what we wanted to do was put a plan together, and Claire presented some of that work yesterday, but also highlighted a number of the risks associated with trying to do that work in a condensed time frame. So when we put that together with the GRS, the scheduling challenges that we have, what we've concluded is that we will sequence those things around, first of all, focusing on GRS, whilst we continue to work on call sign restructuring. But actually, as we look at the GRS processes, they need to integrate anyhow with call sign and the new call sign structure that we So it's likely that our call sign structure changes will now go beyond November, which means that the National Control Room product will go in first. And then we may have some additional rework to do post that going live to get our call sign new structure in place. So a little bit complicated, but we believe from a risk management perspective, it is the right approach, and taking that sort of more prudent approach around the sequencing will stand us in good stead. On a positive, very positive, we had a presentation on the digital portfolio and the great progress that the IM&T team in particular is making. And two things I would call out. The first one is the excellent work that has been done to now get us onto the up-to-date and most modern telephony solution. And that has been a long time in the making. And we just wanted to really call out the work from the team, because it opens up, of course, huge opportunities for us around our ones and our nines and the telephony integration between and the interoperability between those two services. And to be on the most modern solution, obviously, also de-risks a lot of the challenges we might have if we couldn't go forward. So that's really good news. And the second really important piece in terms of the resilience of our infrastructure is that the team conducted a test it's called failover, but basically to take our CAD system for one data center and see if it could run effectively on another data center, in our second data center. So this point about being able to recover quickly if you've got an incident, and it was seamless. It was very successful. So I think it's just from a board's perspective, just wanted to recognise the IM&T team, who often don't get as much of a mention for all the great work they're doing behind the scenes, and particularly around shoring up resilience of our infrastructure. That doesn't mean we haven't got more to do, but I think it's really nice to pause and recognise them. And then just finally on BAF risks, as I mentioned, we raised a BAF risk for GRS. We also raised a BAF risk for our airway system. So our airway system has been in existence, I don't know how long, Claire. It feels like 15 years. And this is the secure network communication system that all the emergency services use. And there is a program run by the Home Office to refresh that, which program is called Emergency Services Network, that's been ongoing for a number of years. But what we're finding is that because that program is taking quite some time to deliver, that of course the infrastructure is aging. And so what we want to do is raise awareness about the need to make sure that the current infrastructure remains robust and resilient whilst we await the rollout of this new emergency services network. So we've raised that as a risk on a risk register. The team is going to work up a little bit more detail about that, and I think then we'll want to come back and talk about how we can assure ourselves that the current infrastructure can be maintained until such time as we have a new solution.
There's a lot there. Thank you so much. That was really good. Thank you, Ron.
So just off the back of that, I mean, and I'm aware, Claire, you've been undertaking, I think, what is called a major systems review, which I assume includes Airwave, ESN, GRS, et cetera, What I was going to suggest you might do, which is something we're doing elsewhere, is all our critical infrastructure, critical applications. Can you rank them in terms of importance and robustness, if I put it that way? And that gives us a way of prioritizing, probably through the DDC, Sheila's committee, about how we tackle what seems to be quite a big portfolio of stuff that needs to be sorted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's
Go from
ongoing. So we're obviously doing the assessment of the infrastructure. It won't cover Airwave because it's not ours. And so the control that we can have over that is limited. What it will cover, it would have picked up some of the issues that we've got with the GRS infrastructure, for example. So we will absolutely bring a report and the issues around those, the risks around those with some level of scoring. I think in terms of the priority of those systems, that's something that we've picked up from the GRS incident as well. So we're going to go back through our service catalogue with EPRR, yes, that is one, to make sure that that we have got those in the right categories in terms of criticality, and therefore if we need to undertake some remedial works in the infrastructure of those to bring them up to that level, then we can do that. We do have a current list with EPRR, so we know should we have a major outage, that we understand the order in which we store those systems. So it's definitely worth a refresh on those, so we've got that as an option.
So can that come back through?
Yeah.
The committee?
It will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I miss something?
No, I don't think so.
Sure.
Sheila's done a fantastic summary of our discussion yesterday. I just wanted to add to that in terms of the clinical digital safety and looking at things through that lens as well. Because we are a clinical service, we are hugely dependent on technology and data in order to deliver safe services. And therefore, I think when we're talking about risk around prioritization, Ronald, the point that you made around the work plan, the portfolio, and also understanding the clinical risks associated, say, with gaps in data quality, or issues with suppliers or GRS or products that we are implementing. So I'm delighted that our CCIO, David, has started and will be working with us, and particularly Pauline and Vanilla, to make sure that we have a really clear and transparent way of identifying and mitigating those digital clinical safety risks, given that it's something that we are so reliant on, whether we work in EOC, so also acronyms, but as the teams in the field as well. Everyone here is hugely reliant on the tech that we use.
Yeah. And thank you, Sheriff, for reminding me of that, because we did invite David to come to us in September, I think he said, with his observations and an outline of where we are in terms of our clinical digital safety. So I think that would be really useful. So David Davis is our new CC, Chief Clinical Information Officer. He's just joined, so we welcomed him to the committee yesterday, but he will be an active member.
Anything further? Anything further from you, Claire, at all? Really, thank you so much. I mean, real comprehensive report on something, but it obviously covered a lot of really big issues. So thank you for that. Right, if we move on now to the business plan.
Okay, so this is asking the board to formally approve two documents. One is the review of our what we how we did against what we said we would do in our business plan 23-24, and also our new business plan for the financial year 24-25. If I start with the former, I think it's worth noting that we set ourselves, well, but first up, these are aligned with our missions, our 3 strategic missions and our 10 priorities. We set ourselves 62 objectives last year, and we achieved 46 of them. We improved on 11, and we deferred 5 back for practical reasons into the following year. So overall, we feel that is a pretty good first year of our strategy. I think another point I would make there is that within that are real improvements for patients in the public in terms of faster 999 call answering, faster response times on both category 1 and category 2, improvements in stroke care, improvements in for cardiac arrest patients, more people getting specialist mental health support, more people getting the benefit of CPR training. So lots of specific improvements for patients in the public included in that document. Where we made improvements but didn't quite get to the ambitious targets we set were in areas like category 2, which people know about. We had an ambitious target on absence. We did make big progress there, but we didn't quite get to where we had set out at the beginning of the year. And also on recruitment of people from minority backgrounds similarly. But overall, against some stretching targets, some good progress against year 1 of our strategy. So perhaps I'll pause there before going to the business plan for this year.
I think that's what we're doing. And so first, so the objectives we didn't complete, we've all moved into this year's business plan.
Yeah, exactly. They were all deferred, and those are practical reasons around what national policies have been set or finance being available, those types of issues.
Any further questions? If not, move on.
Okay, so moving on from that to the business plan for 24-25. Again, what you will see here is this is aligned with our 3 missions and our 10 priorities. You see there very specific commitments on all of those different things. You'll see a clear accountability through management for those, for each one of those deliverables, and we'll be reporting back to this board on a quarterly basis as to how we're getting on against those things. The key themes are the same as you'd expect because they align with the missions that we have set on care, improving our organisation, and contributing to the health of London. But they include commitments to improving our response times, improving our many of the themes, in fact, that have come up during the conversation that we had in this board. So extension of team-based working, focus on EDI, focus on supporting our staff on good health, on expanding further our London Lifesavers programme, focusing on health inequalities. So lots of quite specific things, but all aligned to the missions that we've set out. And I think that what we're seeing, I like to think across the organisation is quite good discipline now of being aligned with those missions, and the various documents that we will give, things like the digital data strategy being clearly aligned with everything that we're doing. And I think if you're in all of that organisation, you'll see people referring back to the strategy, referring back to the missions, and that kind of sense of North Star alignment that we're hoping to achieve being in there. So for commenting.
Yeah. Questions? Yeah. So we have shared this document with the whole organisation. actually have people asking questions about the specifics of the business plan. Frontline staff saying, this is a really good idea, very glad you're doing it, when will it happen, kind of thing. So I was quite encouraged by that. Because I think the thing we've done this year about actually describing the commitment is very specific, so people can actually understand what is the deliverable we're saying we're going to do.
Yeah. I think that's been one of the strengths of the whole strategy, actually. It's sort of things you can go and talk to frontline staff about, because it's really real things, in contrast to many others I've got. 6 mental health cars and 10 urgent health cars.
Well, the 10th one starts on the 17th of June. Yay!
Well done, well done. That's really good news, actually, well done. I know you persistently worked away at that one with those reluctant local trusts. £30 million savings, Rakesh. There's an awful lot there, isn't there? There's some real challenges, but again, commend everyone for the way this is, the family are real and practical.
And we've had a whole big process to engage everybody in developing these commitments. So none of these are being imposed, and people have really work together to produce these commitments. So we do believe we have management buy-in and ownership of this objective.
Yeah, I think this is good. I think this is good. It's something we as a board can keep close on. And so the strategy doesn't become something separate. Which I think is good. That was anything else from yourself, Roger? That's all on that. If not, any further questions for Roger? If not, Mark.
So the BAF naturally follows on from the business plan. As you'll be aware, each year we update the BAF to reflect the business plan. What you've got is very much still in development. It needs to be because there'll be a couple of committees that have had a chance to look at drafts. So the current draft you've got here is really something that's gone through ExCo. It needs to go through the next round of board subcommittees. The content of the BAF each year is a combination of new risks and updated risks. So pretty much every risk in the BAF has been rewritten to some extent, but there are 5 specific new risks that were proposing for inclusion this year. And some of them have already been referred to during the course of the meeting. So if I just go through them briefly, we talked about the overdue incidents earlier on in closing that for that risk. We've mentioned the sexual safety programme work. There are 2 which will go to the digital committee. One is the airwave service, and the other one is related to call signs and the national control room solution. And then we've got a risk in which is about the potential fragmentation across London if there isn't a single coordinated approach to IUC. Some of these risks still need a fair bit of writing up and development. So there'll be further work at ExCo, then go to the board subcommittees, and then get the presented to the board at its next meeting. To say?
Good, thank you. Any questions at all? If not, we'll look forward to that. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Roger, please.
Yeah, so this is just an update on the last meeting that we had of the Patient and Public Council. One of the key things that we are doing there is just having a look at how the council is constituted, and we are intending to make proposals hopefully in the September board meeting as to how the council will work in future. It's working well, but it is time for a refresh, and also to think about that in the context of how we do other types of patient and public engagement, including on the topic of health inequalities. So we made some proposals to the council about how we might do that. They asked us to be slightly less restrictive about how we work with the criteria we're using in terms of we might want on the council, and we had a further meeting with them to go back through that in the next few weeks. We also looked at other issues such as right care, right person as well, and gave members of the council an update on all of those areas. But the main topic is you know, how should the patient be taking actions on that.
Just a reminder, when you report back on this?
So we are aiming to make proposals at the September 5th, right, at the September 5th board meeting, and we'll want to engage with all members before that, obviously, so that we're coming with something that works, and that would be, you know, obviously the topic of how we do co-production with our patients. Get that right, just between this forum and others.
Yeah, we may have discussed it before, and I'm sure other ambulance services have got something useful to look at as well.
Yes, they do indeed. Yes, we are looking at those examples. So for we are thinking to use this as a kind of like an advice, formal kind of advice for detailed advice on our policies and strategies, and using other forums for bringing in the patient voice, as I say, to bring in the voice of people who may struggle to get their voice heard in other matters. Others do things like, you know, big public meetings and those types of things. So I think it is you do need several different approaches to make sure you're getting voice of patients effectively into the organisation at a number of different levels.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions on that? If not, thank you. Quality Council.
Thank you, Chair. So the Quality Account for 2023-24 is presented here for approval. It has already been through the board subcommittee back for voting, and it has been approved there. You will see that there are 10 priorities from last year, 6 of which were achieved, 4 were partially achieved, one of which we've just discussed, which was the urgent care response. We achieved 9 responses, and the 10th one goes live in the next few days. So along with the delivery of the spinal immobilisation update training, which unfortunately started quite late in the year, so didn't actually start to roll out until October, November, but we will continue that throughout this year until we've achieved all of our staff have the opportunity to undertake that. And the other 2 remaining priorities relate to our category 2 being response, and also our call answering being response. Our call answering being throughout the last year improved towards the latter part of the year, but sadly achieved 12 seconds at the close of the year. So we were slightly outside of our aspiration for 10 seconds, but we have shown considerable improvement for the last 6 months. And obviously our category 2 will remain a quality priority as we move into 2024. I think I'll pause there.
Thank you. Any questions for Paul on that? So what we're asking for on this one is for us to approve. Colleagues, do we approve? We do. Approved. Thanks for all the work that's gone into it. Thanks very much. If we come around to any other business, is there any other business? Anyone at all? If not, we know the date of the next meeting. I don't think we have any questions from the public. No. That being the case, any reflections on the meeting? At liberty to raise them now, or to raise them after the meeting by email. If not, do you call the meeting to a close? And thanks very much indeed. I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank these. There's huge amount of work going on at the moment. So really, thank you so much for everything you're putting into this. I mean, this is just a snapshot of what you're doing. I also want to thank my NED colleagues. There's an awful lot they do. And so thank you very much for all the effort you're putting in. And obviously our primary thanks goes to not only our frontline staff, but all those backroom staff that do the unsung hero jobs behind the scene. I'm not picking anyone, but your people clearly have run up recently with the certain things that have been going on. So thank you to everyone. So I think this has been some outstanding work. Thanks very much. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Goodbye all. Thank you.
Bye, Mark.